everyone. How are you all doing? Give me a cheer. A very happy International Women's Day to all the amazing women, and a huge thanks to every man out here in this audience who enables the women near them, who supports them, and just grows the entire community. It's my first time here in LaraCon, and I'm really excited. To give my introduction, I am Khushbu Verma. I work as a platform engineer at Appright. Appright is a backend as a service platform, and we use PHP. It's an open source project with around 47,000 GitHub stars. So if you haven't checked it out, do check it out. Before Appright, I was working at Microsoft in the Azure storage team as a backend engineer, and I have also interned at Adobe and Microsoft. And I love sharing my experience around tech. I'm a core backend developer, but I also enjoy building communities, interacting with people like you all. And today I'm here to talk about a topic that is something that at our company, as we are scaling, it's a small startup, but we are now scaling our cloud offering. And as we scale, we always run into production challenges of scalability. And this is something that we had to implement in multiple places in our infrastructure. So I'm excited to share it with you all. Whenever I tell people that what we write code in PHP, I always get those faces. I don't know if you all have seen those, but I do believe that it's a strong language and it's a strong framework, and Laravel is a strong framework, PHP is a strong language, and it has a lot of capabilities. So imagine that if your PHP server had 10,000 concurrent requests on a single application server, and it had very low latency of, let's say, 50 milliseconds per request. And now imagine doing all that without the overhead of managing threads or callbacks or promises. Interesting, right? We'll explore how in this talk. But PHP has a couple of bottlenecks. We all know that PHP was originally designed as a template language for building websites, and its execution model reflects its origin in that sense. So let me explain how the traditional PHP processes requests. So there's a typical request response cycle. The client makes the request through a browser. It makes an HTTP request to your web server, for example, Nginx, Apache, whatever. The web server handles the initial request. It gets to know that it is a PHP file, and then it initializes the PHP process. So it can either spawn a process in the CGI mode, it can either pass the request to a FPM worker, or it can pass the request to a mod PHP if you're using the PHP module. But whatever happens, basically it's spawning a new process. We all have studied operating systems in our college, and we know processes, threads, etc., and how each of these things affect the CPU performance, especially if you're working on large-scale scalable systems, where it's really important to understand and optimize things at the hardware level or as close as to the operating system. So once the execution is completed, the PHP process loads the entire script, it executes it, it generates the output, and it returns it back to the server. And after the response is sent, the process termination happens. Basically, in traditional PHP, the process or the worker which is handling the request gets terminated, or it becomes available for a new request in the case of PHP FPM workers. But there is a challenge in PHP. So firstly, as we discussed, the design originally was very simple. It has a synchronous nature. What that means is that as the requests come in, they get executed sequentially, so one after the other. And even with the PHP FPM pools, each concurrent request requires separate PHP worker processes. So for example, if you have 10 concurrent requests all coming at the same time, you will have to spin up 10 processes. If you had 100 concurrent users, you will have to spin 100 PHP processes. And as you can imagine, it's a lot of overhead, it's a lot of memory usage, it's a lot of resource usage, and each process has its own memory space. It requires memory for the PHP runtime to start, and each process typically takes around 15 to 30 MB of the RAM of the system. And not just that, PHP processes are blocking in the sense of they block the IO. So the code is executed in a synchronous fashion. So until the code operation, for example, you're just doing a file get contents of a URL. So while that content is being fetched, the process is gonna wait. It's gonna be idle. it's just gonna sit there and wait until the response is received. Once the response is received, then it will do something else. While this process is idle, it's not gonna be used by any other pending job, and it is just costing you memory. We are not utilizing our hardware or compute efficiently, right? And it's kind of wasting resources. So let's take a look at a very simple example on your screens. It's a simple function, get product details, let's say on any e-commerce platform. You have the product ID, and you, let's say, want to make 3 API calls. One, to just get the product details. Second, to get the pricing of the product. And thirdly, to get the reviews of the product. So in a traditional PHP server, if you just make these 3 calls, it's just gonna happen synchronously. So if each request, let's say, takes around 200 milliseconds to execute, the total time is gonna be the addition of the response times of all of these 3 API calls, which means it's gonna take around 600 milliseconds to just run this code. And the PHP process is gonna be mostly idle. It's just gonna wait for the responses, and each concurrent user will require another full PHP process. So if you have like a lot of concurrent requests coming in, it's gonna spin up a lot of processes. So obviously, with this approach, we all can understand that there are going to be scalability challenges. The system might run well for a couple of hundreds of users, but as the scale increases, we'll have to optimize it, right? So what all challenges will we see here? The first one is the resource consumption. You are going to see that a lot of memory is required, a lot of overhead is there, and we all know that each server has certain connection limits. So a server can only accept a certain number of connections. So again, if you are opening a lot of connections, it's going to have, again, its overhead, it's going to throttle your connections, and CPU itself will have to deal with a lot of context switching. So multiple processes will be there, it will keep on switching between them, and obviously IO inefficiency is there. We are waiting for IO response, we are waiting for the network response. It's not efficient. But PHP developers realized this, and they tried a lot of ways to optimize this, and they tried to mitigate these issues. So there are a couple of options that PHP has. The first thing that we discussed is the PHP FPM process rules. Basically, it has a lot of pre-spawned workers, and it tries to reuse it for incoming requests. So imagine that pre-spawned workers are there, and you're using it as a request is coming. The second thing I think PHP has is a cache, which can cache the compiled PHP bytecode, so that it does not have to always run it all the time. And if you are using databases like Postgres, you all will know tools like PG Bouncer, which have database connection pools, and these connections are basically in a pool, and incoming requests can use it and put it back to the pool. So kind of optimizes the flow, right? But is it good enough? Maybe not. So even with this improvement, there is a fundamental problem that remains, which is one process per request. So we are again spinning a one process per request, and it becomes a bottleneck for highly concurrent systems. So why is the need for asynchronous PHP in the first place, right? If we look at the diagram on the screen, we can see that if we are processing requests as they come in a synchronous fashion, the total time taken to process the entire thing is the addition of all of these requests that we are making. However, if we want to optimize our compute and we want to use the resources efficiently, we can run it in an async fashion. So all of these can run parallelly. The computed result can be combined all together, and it does not have to work in a single threaded fashion. So, but PHP wasn't originally designed to be an asynchronous programming language. Unlike popular languages like JavaScript, which has event loops, or even Go, which has Go routines, PHP's synchronization model was actually deeply embedded in the design. So there are challenges that developers face every now and then to go past that synchronous ability of the system. As event-driven programming languages they gain popularity, PHP developers also tried to find out ways to make it work in an event-driven fashion. So they tried to implement some callbacks. So what the callbacks do is basically they have event loops, they create event loops, they have concurrent requests, and they try to write it in a JavaScript kind of a way where you have function calls and then you have callbacks. So we'll see a small example, but before we show that, I'll just give you some context. So basically we have a script where we are kind of trying to make 3 API calls, and we'll try to make it in a concurrent fashion. So let me see if I can show you the code, and let me zoom it in. Is it visible? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. So let's go to the code line by line. Basically, if you look at it, I'm using a library called as React Event Loop, right? And what we are doing is that we are creating a event loop object, and I'm creating a new browser instance here, and I'm keeping a note of the start time when this request starts to get triggered. I have two variables. One is to keep a track of my completed requests, and one is the total requests. So I'm making 3 API calls, and for this example I'm just using a fake API call generator. So it's just gonna be a placeholder for API calls, and we'll come back to this check request complete function later, but look at this for loop. So this for loop is actually going through the list of URLs, and it is printing that it is starting to make a request, right? And if it is just doing a simple thing, it is just doing browser get URL, so just get whatever content the URL is returning to us, and if it is successful, the call will go to the successful callback, and otherwise it will go in the error callback. So in the success callback we are not doing much, we are just passing the URL and the variables that we have. If it is successful, we fetch the body of the content and we increment our counter for the completed requests, and we print completed requests. And then if it fails, we just make a call to the error callback, and the check request complete method is just checking that have we processed all the requests that we had. In our case, we had 3 API calls to make, so we just check whether all of them are there, and then we try to print the time it took to run them. So I'm just going to run it here, and we'll observe something. So if you can see here, so all the 3 requests started at the same time, right? So we see that it was not synchronous in this case, it happened all at the same time. If I had concurrent requests, all API calls were made at the same time. We initialized all of those, and then as they got completed, we saw the sequence and we saw the result, and whatever data we got, we saw here. So cool, right? We actually found a way to make requests work in an event loop fashion. So this example demonstrates the fundamental callback style approach to async PHP, right? Where calls are initiated, there are multiple callbacks to handle the different scenarios, and it's good. But there was a problem with it. Just like in JavaScript, there's a concept called as callback hell. I don't know how many of you have heard of it, but what happens is that if you're making multiple requests, the output of one function is being used in the other, there are multiple callbacks. Soon the code becomes really unmanageable, where you have a lot of nested callbacks. So it kind of starts to look like a pyramid where it goes like this and this. So just think of it as pass the values to this, and then it computes the result. Not again efficient. Even if it is efficient in terms of functioning, it's not really maintainable, and it can really get messy and hard to understand, and again new developers will face challenges with it. So there are some drawbacks to these early approaches of async operations. Not just the callback approach, there are also things like promises. A lot of you might have used Guzzle as a library and might have noticed that there are promises, and even people tried to find ways to use promises in PHP. But again, all of these approaches had a couple of challenges. If we talk about challenges, yeah, cognitive overload is one. It's really difficult. It's a complex mental model for developers to understand what is written, and it's a different writing style as compared to how we traditionally write PHP code. So it's a different syntax altogether. And the error handling also becomes challenging, because imagine the error stack becomes so huge that there are so many messages, and it's really hard to debug what's exactly going on. And ecosystem compatibility also wise, I think PHP libraries, I don't know, they don't really go well with these kind of approaches, and code readability also becomes a challenge. So this is why native coroutines, which we'll discuss just in the next section, represent a significant improvement, because they are a more natural way to write async code, just the way we are used to write it in PHP. So how many of you are aware of Soul? Okay, some of you. So Soul represents one of the most powerful and comprehensive approaches to async PHP. It's actually, unlike pure PHP libraries, it's a C-based PHP extension. It fundamentally changes how PHP applications can handle concurrency and I/O operations. So it operates on a different model than traditional PHP. It has an event-driven programming model, as we discussed. It implements a high-performance event-driven loop in C++, and it has a persistent performance pool, process pool, which means that it has a pool of different processes which stay in the memory. So it's very fast. It eliminates the traditional PHP bootstrap overhead, and it has native coroutines, which we are gonna see in the demo in a bit. It has coroutines are basically functions that can run in parallel, right? And it has integrated components. You can easily integrate it with TCP IP connections, UDP servers, HTTP, WebSocket connections, etc. So it's really easy. And as you can see, this is the process model looks like. It has a master process which is kind of managing it, manages processes, worker processes and task processes. You don't have to go into depth of it, but we'll understand like what advantages does it give to us. So what are SOOL coroutines? They are lightweight threads, right? So they are lightweight threads which can run in a single process, right? So that solves our problem, right? PHP so far was having a single process for a single request, but now with SOOL, we can have threads, right? The concept of threads which can run within the same process, and it allows us to create and manage many concurrent tasks without the overhead of traditional threads. And SOOL threads are also called as fibers because threads, and they enable asynchronous IO operations, and it allows your PHP code to be more performant, and it can complete other tasks while your IO is waiting to get some response back. How it works is that it works at the scheduler. The coroutine scheduler automatically knows when to switch the context between different IO tasks, and it makes it easy to write asynchronous code. And you can manage these coroutines without any additional keywords or libraries, and it can support different popular tools that we use day to day like Redis, MySQL, etc. It's very easy to integrate it all. So if I tell you about examples where you would see these coroutines being used, or even you can use, is for example your HTTP server client configuration, where you can create HTTP servers and clients which want to handle multiple concurrent requests. You can also use it for database operations, like performing database operations like which are coroutine aware basically. And then you can have network communications, your task queues. In fact, one of the use cases that we had in our system is log streaming. So let's say that something is building and you are streaming live logs, and you want to listen to these logs while the build is happening, and you also want to print it, you want to process those logs, whatever, right? Anything that needs to happen in parallel, that can be done easily using coroutines. So let's again go back to the demo, and I would like to show you something starting with this file. So again, it has like two things that we will see here. So look at the code. First of all, we are importing the SOOL coroutine client and SOOL coroutine as co. And then let's say that we had to make 5 API calls in parallel. So what you see here is again some mock APIs. So I'm giving the host and the URL and the name of the API. And right now I'm running it in a synchronous fashion, how PHP would normally run it. So you would see that I'm just printing out that I'm running sequential requests. I am noting down the start time using microtime, and I'm again running a loop where I'm making curl requests to these APIs. So it's simple. We are initializing our curl, we are passing the URL, we are setting some headers, and we are doing curl exec. After curl exec happens, we are just closing the connection, and once it is completed, we just print that we have completed it, and we are noting down the time that it is taking to run this particular request. And after that, I am just printing what was the time that it took. After that, I am running it in a parallel fashion using coroutines, again noting down my start time, and then everything that has to run in parallel, you put it inside co-run. It's a function. So you just start it, and again I am doing a for each loop. The difference here is that for each again API request, I am doing a go. Go is a function that you use to perform a single task. So again, for each of these APIs, I am just initializing this go function. I am creating an HTTP client. I am sending it the URL. I am setting the headers again and just doing the get call. And after it is done, I am just printing out that okay, this API request is successful, and I am closing my connection. And notice here, I am just printing the end time. I am printing the total time it took, and I am also comparing how fast it is by taking out a percentage of the performance. So let's try to run this and see what exactly happens here. Alright, it is running. So as you can see, it is running sequentially. The first few commands it ran sequentially. You must have noticed a slight delay, and these logs were printed line by line as we could see, and the total time it took to run the sequential execution is 2 seconds, 2.3 seconds. It did feel slow, right? But I don't know if you noticed, this thing happened pretty fast. It ran all of these requests in a parallel fashion, and you notice here that the order is different it's not actually following an order, because obviously it's just starting all the requests at the same time, and whatever gets finished first gets printed out first. So all of these ran in parallel. The execution time, it just took 0.5 seconds, and we can see it is 4x faster with coroutines. Instant performance difference that we can see. Even if I run it multiple times, this time you can notice that it's still like running sequentially takes time, and if it is parallel, it just happens really fast. So imagine, this was such a small example, but imagine when you are running it in a highly performant, server, it's just one server, your website is getting a lot of traction, you really want performance, right? And it's gonna have huge multitudes of performance benefits for you, so you can definitely, check it out. 1 second. Okay, so let me switch the screen. Yeah, so we have multiple coroutine methods, as you saw some of the examples on the screen previously. So the ones that we used were co-run. Basically, it just bootstraps an environment where your different coroutine threads can run. Then you have a co-go function, which is basically a new coroutine. So everything you want to run in parallel goes inside this go function. And then if you want to have a non-blocking sleep, so you want one of the threads to maybe sleep while the other things still keep on happening, you can use the sleep. Then there is a join function if you want multiple things to happen together basically, and after that you want to perform some action. So you can put those things inside join. If you want to get the ID of a particular coroutine, you can use the get ID function, and similarly there are multiple others, so you can check that out later. Now let us say that we want to have some shared variables inside these coroutines. So each coroutine by default has its local context. What that means is whatever you define at the local level cannot be accessed by any other coroutine. So what if you want to do some shared communication, right? So we can use global variables, that is one way. So I'm gonna again show you in the code example. So I have again another file called as global context. So let's take a look here. So what it is doing, something very similar. Initially inside the core run, I have declared a global variable and the value is initialized to shared. Inside my first coroutine, I am printing out this value. So it's gonna print shared, right? Then I am modifying it. I am also creating a local variable. I am printing its value and then I am sleeping for 2 seconds. And inside this particular coroutine, I am first sleeping because I don't want both of them to start at the same time. I just want the first one to be able to modify the value of the shared variable. So I'm just adding the sleep. Then I'm printing the value of the global variable. And then I'm creating another local variable just to show that what was the value of local. Was it this or was it overwritten? So, and I'm just printing it. Very simple example. Let's just print it out. Alright, so we can see it first printed the value of the global variable which is shared. Next it printed the local value of the first coroutine, it's coroutine 1 local. Then the global variable has been modified by the second coroutine. So it is modified, and secondly the local context remains inside the coroutine. So now you know that if you want to do some shared variables, if you want something, you have some variable that you want to be accessed by multiple coroutines, you can use global variables, but otherwise the context of these coroutines is very local and it's very safe in that sense. The next thing we have is channels, which is used to basically communicate between multiple coroutines. So channels in SUL coroutines provide a mechanism for thread safe operations. It is a very efficient inter-coroutine communication, and it acts as thread safe, lock free, bounded and unbounded queue. Basically you can think of it just like a queue that we have in any other language. It has push and pop operations, and it has like this FIFO thing, right? Whatever you push first, you can pop that first. So let's again look at the code example here. So we have a channels file. Again, very simple example. What it is doing here is it is creating a new channel, right? So as you can see, this is how you initialize a new channel. Think of it just like a queue. And what I'm doing, I have like 3 routines here. So 3 things happening in parallel. Let's say one is downloading some content from Yahoo, one is downloading some content from Google, and the third one just needs to know what exactly is happening and it needs to do some action based on the result of the first 2. How would the third one know? that the first two actions have completed, right? So this is an example. You are just making a HTTP call to yahoo.frankfurt whatever, and then you're passing the port, and then you're just doing a get call, and we're just trying to get the body. As soon as the call is complete, we are closing the connection request and we are pushing Yahoo done into our channel, right? Just a simple push that we use in other languages as well. Same for Google, we are just getting the body and we are pushing it inside. And in the third one, see, again, there is no sleep here, right? Unlike the last time when I was trying to guess for how long should I sleep before the other action gets completed. That's hard for us to tell in a production environment. So we have something called as channel. So I'm just using the channel here, and I'm iterating over the requests and I'm popping my results. So let's just try to run this as well. So you would notice that it executed both the requests and I got Yahoo done and Google done. So basically my third coroutine was able to tell when the other two finished, and there can be so many examples of this when we need this, something like this in a production environment. Now let's talk about some performance numbers. Although you can go home after this, try some performance benchmarks. In general, performance, if I talk about performance, then your coroutine request can handle up to 10,000 concurrent connections every second on a modest hardware, which is like nothing too fancy, and it has very low memory usage, so it uses just around 2 MB per 1000 coroutines, versus if you notice it would use around 2 GB of space for 1000 threads. And the context switching is very fast because, as I discussed earlier, it operates mostly in the memory layer and it has microseconds of performance, like it's very fast, the context switching is very fast and the latency is pretty low. So for comparison, it takes around 5 to 20 milliseconds for complex operations, whereas PHP FPM might take around 100 to 500 milliseconds for the same thing. And it also has a lot of compatible I/O operations, so everything that you would do in your system otherwise, it's very compatible with that. So you can easily use your HTTP requests, your WebSocket requests, you can use your MySQL, Postgres, any other clients that you want, and you can also use system calls. You can also use curl inside your coroutine. So if you want to make any curl requests from inside a coroutine thread, you can just do that. So pretty helpful. So that was the talk from my side. I hope that you found it useful. You can just try. We actually use this in production and it has helped us increase the performance of our cloud offering. And here are my social media handles. I would love to connect with you all after this, and yeah, let's chat. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Khushbu, for being here. I've got so many questions, but I'll ask you different questions.
Okay.
So first of all, how is your experience? You were supposed to come last year, but because of family emergency, you couldn't attend.
Yes.
So how is your experience being in Laracon, India?
Yeah, so I have been to a lot of conferences in India, outside India, and one thing that I really loved about Laracon is the community culture that you have here. It feels like such a closely knit community when everyone supports everyone. And I was just telling Vishal before this talk that usually when I deliver my talks, I do a small activity because people usually are sleepy after lunch breaks or they just feel tired. And I was asking him like, should I do a small game? And he's like, no need, the audience here is so energetic already. So it's really great to know that there is such a community vibe here. One thing that I've learned in my career is that the peers around you are your support system. Usually we start comparing ourselves with people in our immediate circle, but the world is really huge and opportunities are endless, and the people sitting next to you are the ones who are actually gonna uplift you. So make a use of every single connection that you have here. Talk to people, talk to sponsors, talk to all the speakers, and take home as much knowledge that you can.
Thank you, Khushbu. Thank you for being
so
here.
Much.
Thank you very much.